Good afternoon and welcome, everybody. This would be the Jeff Cameron Show right here on 93.3 Real Talk Radio, Warchant TV. We broadcast live from lovely Clearwater, Florida. More on that in a bit. You can see the sponsor right there above and beyond. We love them. I can tell you that. This is good times, and it's also interesting times, so I'm not wasting any of our time. I'm bringing in the man. He's on the screen already. You see him. Ira Schafeld normally joins us on a Monday. Today, we expedited that because there is news that breaks. Of course, when we're on location, news breaks. But it's the story we've all been talking about for a very, very long time. And now we have some clarity, a lot of clarity, in fact. Ira, how are you, brother?
I'm good. I felt like I should do the Chris Collinsworth, like slide into the picture.
That'd be sweet, yeah.
It's not normal for a Jeff Cameron show.
If you had a standing mic and you could just lean in there. Well, okay, Ira, you've been working on this story for a very long time. All of us have covered it and watched it. Obviously, you had the sources with the folks over at Florida State, so I'm going to pick your brain about all this. I'm going to start big picture. And you guys are going to want to stay tuned to warchant.com all day. I know I just got done shooting a video with Aslan and Gene. He's here now. He's going to be writing a story. There's going to be a lot of stuff on this. So we got a lot of content coming out of what is the biggest story that affects Florida State and its future in athletics for the foreseeable future. I just want to start by saying, Ira, I suggested to Tom when the news broke this morning that I wear a shirt when we go to the ACC kickoff that just says, "Not so ironclad." Can I wear that shirt? Not so ironclad?
Ironclad isn't what it used to be.
Not so ironclad indeed. I think I'm going to start by telling the audience, and I'll quote from the story, and then I want to get one by one and get your thoughts on some of the issues here. But I want to start by saying, and I don't know how you feel about this, your personal opinion about this. Am I reading into this poorly? This is a massive win for Florida State. I don't see it any other way. I've looked at it. I know I'm biased. I am biased. As a Nole, I'm biased. I've read the story. I've looked at what we can collect in terms of numbers, what we think it means, whether it's the Success Initiative or obviously the ratings initiative and all those things. And if I juxtaposed it to what you and I have been talking about for years now, and since this whole thing came up and the original idea that it would cost Florida State over $500 million to try to leave this conference, and they were stuck till 2036 and all those things, buddy, I don't know how this isn't anything other than a day to celebrate for Florida State, Clemson, and anybody else trying to get the hell out of this league. Am I wrong?
Man, I'm with you, but I also know that there are a lot of Florida State fans that wanted out of this conference 10 years ago. And when the lawsuit was filed 14, 15 months ago, they wanted to be out of the conference right then. Now they want to be out of the conference tomorrow. So I get it from that perspective. If you went into this with the idea that the only victory that could be declared was getting us out of this conference ASAP, and we'll pay what we have to pay, but we don't want to pay $500 million, but get that number down and let us get out tomorrow. If that was your goal, then you're probably disappointed. I don't know if that was ever realistic. Probably not ever realistic. The reality was Florida State did have a contract till 2036, and the media rights were part of that. And there is another exit fee that was $130 or $140 million. So the grand total looked outrageous, and the fact that you might be stuck in that long was daunting. To your point, the two biggest things that Florida State wanted out of this lawsuit were they wanted to get out much quicker than 2036. Yes, they would love to have been out in 2026 or 2027. But the big thing is they just want to get out way before 2036, before this revenue gap between the SEC, Big Ten, and the ACC got to $40-50 million a year. The other thing they wanted was more money per year for the schools that bring in the most money. That's the Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, maybe Miami, the schools that bring in the biggest television ratings and have the most success. Well, up until Florida State filed this lawsuit, they only got one of those three things. It was just as you said, the Success Initiative, which if you won on the field, if you won a championship, then you get a little bit extra money. But it wasn't, they would never do any, the other ACC schools wouldn't do anything for the bigger brands. Well, now, 15 months after the lawsuit was filed, they're doing that. And again, we'll talk about the numbers, but it's going to be between $15 to $20 million a year for Florida State that they weren't going to have if they never filed the lawsuit. Plus, that exit fee is going to be reduced. ESPN's reporting it's going to be under $100 million by
Huge.
Yeah, within 4 or 5 years, and that's again, if you're talking about what you wanted from a realistic standpoint, yeah, I'm with you. I think it's a huge win, but I also understand a lot of you people watching this right now are throwing stuff at their computers because they don't want to be in this conference for another 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, but I don't think they're being realistic, and I'm not trying to chide. I'm not trying to talk down to anybody, and I'm certainly far from an expert on all of this. But if you consider that this was never going to go the distance, there was no way. We all said that. We knew that, right? We talked out loud. Like, they're never going to let this go through and complete trial, and there was always going to have to be some sort of an agreement. If you consider where Florida State was at the time that they felt that they had no choice but to file the lawsuits, because what you just described was happening annually. I remember you calling me from over in Jacksonville at Ponte Vedra or whatever. Yeah, Amelia Island. And we were having this conversation. Basically, if I remember this correctly, and how nasty it ended up getting, the rest of the league and the ACC itself was telling FSU to go pound sand. They basically said, go to hell. We're not going to give you anything that you want. And how dare you ask for anything more? They were offended, and we were labeled as uppity and a bad actor and a terrible member of the world and everything else for this. And meanwhile, fast forward to where we are today, they just ceded everything we wanted. Everything. We get way more money out of this deal so that the gap between us and an SEC school or a Big Ten school annually won't be this gross 30, 40, $50 million. They give you you don't even listen. You got to be good. We understand that, the success initiatives and all, but you're going to have, it's a redistribution model. So you're getting a ton of money that you weren't going to get it just by being FSU. That's them acknowledging that the brand matters way more than Duke or Wake or the rest of these bums that don't do anything in football. I don't know how you could look at it any other way but to say it's a massive victory. I think it is. Do I want to be out of the ACC in an hour? Sure. Was that ever realistic? No, not really. And I think we all knew that. And that's why there was the wringing of the hands. So I guess I'm just.
I was just going to say, going back to those negotiations you talked about in Amelia Island 2 Mays ago, it was May of 2023, when they had those negotiations. Basically, everybody, even in the media, would say, well, for Florida State and Clemson to get more money, then these other schools would have to agree to take less money. And there's no way they're going to do that. Why would they do that? They have this ironclad contract till 2036. Well, here we are. And now, according to the report and again, I have some numbers from the FSU standpoint. I don't have all the numbers from the reporting from ESPN. The other schools in the conference are going to be getting $7 million less than they've been making. So they're taking a haircut to keep Florida State happy in the short term, knowing that Florida State's still going to be leaving. This isn't keeping Florida State in it forever. This is just keeping it together for a few years. And I think what you go back to motivations, listen, man, there was a threat that they might lose the lawsuit. This lawsuit, it's probably not a coincidence that the Supreme Court ruled in Florida last week that they weren't going to consider the ACC's effort to pause the lawsuit. So now it was clear to the ACC that this lawsuit in Florida was going to keep going forward. And if this lawsuit in Florida concluded or wrapped up before what's happening in North Carolina, which it very well could have, they could have been out completely. Florida State could have made a jailbreak, but if they won the lawsuit, but Florida State also doesn't know 100% sure that that's going to happen. Right. So you're cutting you're hedging your bet a little bit. But yeah, man, it's compared to what everybody told us from the media. And again, I get more mad at the media sometimes than I even do those other schools. But because the schools are just looking out for themselves, but the media, who are supposed to be objective, would tell us that the contract was ironclad. There's no getting away. They're not going to get out early. And why would these schools give you more money? You signed the contract. Well, here it is. They've done both of those things.
That's my point, is they've absolutely did that. And those other schools recognize something that that's the point that Florida State was making and that we all argued on behalf of Florida State. Those other schools understand that if Florida State and Clemson were not in this conference, the television deal that they would have negotiated with ESPN would have been for pennies compared to what they get because we're here. They never wanted to accept that. They never believed in that reality, but that just was proven to them. You will take less money, or good luck. Good luck. Find another deal that's going to pay the remainder of these ACC schools anything close to what ESPN's paying. Nobody wants Boston College and Syracuse. Nobody wants those universities. Who are we kidding? So,
hey, Jeff, Wake Forest is the fastest growing brand in college sports. It's growing so fast that their head football coach just resigned because he knows they can't compete.
It's 100% that. I've got so many questions here. Again, for those wondering at home, I should do this, and this is from today's article in ESPN, and I'll give you just what we're talking about here. Florida State and Clemson will vote tomorrow on an agreement that would ultimately result in the settlement of 4 ongoing lawsuits between the schools and the ACC and a new revenue distribution strategy that would solidify the conference's membership for the near future. The ACC Board of Directors scheduled to hold a call tomorrow to go over the settlement terms. In addition, Florida State has called a board meeting to present the terms at noon tomorrow as well. Clemson plans to do the same. All 3 boards must agree to the settlement for it to move forward. According to sources, several key objectives, 2 key objectives were established. A new revenue distribution model based on viewership. Boom, win for Florida State and Clemson. Huge. A change in the financial penalties for exiting the league's granted rights deal prior to 2036. Boom, another huge win for Florida State. And Ira, I dare say this sets them up to be a free agent at the exact moment that you would want to be a free agent. But I'm going to take it a step further. What's keeping, now I'm getting maybe out ahead of here because I like to do this. What would keep Florida State from announcing where they're going next within, say, the next 3 weeks? Why couldn't they just say, hey, in 2029, you know it, I know it, peace, bitches, and we're joining the SEC or the Big Ten? Well, because they're free to do that now, right? They're free to have these kinds of conversations.
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know for sure. What I do know is, I don't know that – I would say that from everything I've heard, Florida State is very confident that they're going to have a home in one of those 2 conferences.
Yes.
Now, the question is, do they have a home in either one? Does it have to be just them, or does it have to be them in another school? There's probably some moving parts there. But I do think they're very confident. They wouldn't have done all this if they were not very confident they were going to have a home in one of those 2 conferences. So I don't know how far those talks have gotten. I also don't know, again, this has to be ratified tomorrow. There are going to be those separate meetings. So we'll know probably tomorrow afternoon for sure that the deal has been reached. And then at that point, yeah, you might be right. I mean, it might be to a point where they can start having these negotiations. Certainly, it's not like it's going to wait till 2031 or 2032. I mean, the fact that if Florida State can start planning, like they could get the money set aside. And we've already heard people have speculated that Florida State already has that pile of money set aside if they wanted to pay $100 million. I don't know that that's accurate. Maybe they have to go get some private equity money. They're spent $400 million or whatever it is on these new facilities that they're building. But, it gives them a deadline. Okay, we need to have this money by then, and we need to have our plan in place. And yeah, the bigger thing, the message it sends, even if it's not officially, the message to me, the most important message is it sends that message to the SEC that, hey, the Big Ten comes to market before you guys do.
Right.
And if you want to head that off at the pass, I know, man, we've all been hearing for 15 years that the SEC doesn't need Florida State because they already have Florida. They have this market. Well, that's because they never thought the Big Ten might really take it. If they really think the Big Ten might really take it, then the SEC may jump ahead. So now, again, you said the FSU, might be a free agent. I mean, they might be, they may be Shotani here.
Yeah, Shohei. Yeah, listen, you got to start winning some games now. I mean, that matters both for the money that you can bring in because of the Success Initiative, right, but also you bolster the brand even further. So you can't be out here languishing in basketball like we are currently. You can't be out here going 2-10. So we all understand Florida State has to do their part. But if Florida State is operating anywhere near peak efficiency, they are the jewel of the free agent market in 2029 when the Big Ten is renegotiating their deal and when the SEC a couple of years later is doing the same, like you're talking about. I can't fathom that there isn't already ongoing discussions from those 2 leagues in the powers that be saying, we got to figure something out here with Florida State and Clemson. We got to figure something out. I mean, right?
I think so, yeah.
I 100% think so. And that's probably true of North Carolina. It's maybe true of Miami. I don't know who else in this league would garner that kind of attention. Perhaps Virginia. You've heard that rumored before too. I don't know, but I am absolutely fascinated by this. And again, I keep coming back to this being a massive victory for Florida State. You get more money. You get out earlier. There's a new revenue distribution model that pays you just for being you. You're a free agent at the exact same time you need to be a free agent. Everything that you wanted when you filed the lawsuit has happened. The one thing that didn't happen is you didn't get out scot-free, which we weren't sure they were ever going to be able to do that. And you didn't get out today. You got to wait till 2029. Other than that, man, I think you did it. You did everything you wanted to do in this. I got to ask you this. Can we flip it? Why'd the ACC do this?
Man, I think that two things with the lawsuit. I think one, a grant of rights had never been challenged in any conference anywhere in sports. And so this was a landmark decision. So I think they had some pressure, I'm sure, from ESPN saying, listen, guys, if this thing buckles, we're all screwed. I mean, the whole sport, because we have granted rights in all these contracts. And if this loses in court, we're all screwed. And listen, man, if you listen to Judge Cooper's, those hearings, they're boring as hell. But if you listen to Judge Cooper, the circuit court judge here in Leon County, he is not. He made some comments in those early hearings about, do you think it's to the ACC attorneys? Do you think it's fair that because somebody signed a contract, they're stuck in it for 20 years? They have to pay $500 million just to get out of a contract in the state of Florida. This is a Florida school that they don't have any rights to. He made several comments along those lines. And then, as we said, once that Supreme Court ruling came and they said, listen, they said last week, not only can you, we're not going to hear it now, don't send this to us again. We're not going to hear it again. So this case is going on in Leon County. And I think, man, they were fearful because two things. One, if they lost that lawsuit, it could have proved that grant of rights across, that they're not binding. Yeah. That screws up all of these television contracts. And then the other thing for those other schools, they'd be out of water. If Florida State gets out today or gets out next month or next year, what would their revenues be? Like, they'd have to renegotiate a TV deal with what? I mean, they'd be on CW Tuesday mornings and they might get, $100 a game. So there's no value to that conference here. At least for them, this gets them another 5 years of a nice paycheck. It's not quite what they were making. They're all taking about $7 million less, but it's still way more than they would get on the open market. So I think ESPN was worried, and I think these ACC schools were worried. And at the end of the day, Jim Phillips was probably worried because, he's out of a job if this thing falls apart completely. Now, he may try to claim victory and say that they kept it together as long as possible and solidified things. And that was kind of the messaging a couple months ago when there was talks of these settlement talks. But, man, I mean, again, if you look at it realistically and put away your emotions and suck up the fact that, yeah, man, we may have to go to Snuggy Hill one or two more times. If you get past that, Florida State, compared to where they were, I mean, I think it's a big one.
Yeah, so for the ACC, they would just do what they had to do for short-term security, I suppose, and try to get as much money as they possibly can. But ultimately, again, I describe this as a win-win. One other question, we're going to be talking about this a lot for the next several weeks, I'm sure. But is this now – it's weird to pivot this way, but doesn't the basketball job become more attractive now that we're kind of settling all this stuff and there's no questions and you can kind of move forward understanding that the deficit isn't going to be nearly as much as people were worried it was going to be?
I think it's definitely a good thing. I don't know if there's still all the other challenges that come with Florida State, and a head coach that gets hired today knows he may not be here in 2030 or 2031, but it's one less thing that's a big red flag. And they've got a few red flags around this job, which we'll be talking about and writing about as well, just in terms of the commitment to basketball and some of those, and where they're at right now from NIL and all those things. But this was one more thing looming out there. What conference are you going to be in? And if you can't, not only are you going to be stuck in this conference, but you're persona non grata in this conference for who wants that job. So yeah, I do think it makes it more attractive. I don't know that it changes the complexion completely, but it definitely takes away one of the negatives, I think.
Man, I can't wait for all the articles out of the Triangle telling everybody that Florida State's become the belle of the ball. Any second now, right?
The ninja pulled it off again. He was behind the scenes pulling the strings.
Thanks, brother. I'll talk to you again later tomorrow, actually, when we do headlines. But always appreciate the hard work. Be good.
Hey, man, I enjoy the view.
Yeah.
I wish I was there, but I'm at least enjoying the view. So
yeah. Well,
happy
I'll
for
be
you
doing it
guys.
again tomorrow from right here, buddy.
Right.
Later. That's Irashafel, Warchant.com. Joined us on the program as he's wont to do on Mondays, but we got him in here with the quickness because that's breaking news of a good kind.
Yeah, this is it's a good day. I've been an absolutist in this particular issue, on this issue about get out now. I didn't think you could cut a deal that would get you this much money. I didn't think that the ACC would do it, and there's a lot of implications for it. And I'm here for it, man. I'm here for it. This is a good day.
I think it's a great day. I think Florida State won all across the board. I feel like they won. It's Jeff Cameron Show 93.3 Real Talk Radio Warchant TV. Hour number 2, Jeff Cameron Show 93.3 Real Talk Radio Warchant TV. I want to thank our friends at Above and Beyond. Today is day 1 with our relationship as they are our newest sponsor to jump on board. We appreciate them greatly. You can see behind me just how much I should celebrate our newfound relationship with our friends at Above and Beyond. Had a great time getting to know Matt yesterday. We'll tell you more about them, what they offer you, the opportunity for you guys to come on down here and be a part of this. Just beautiful, beautiful weather, obviously, and these beautiful facilities. We're in the lap of luxury right now in this condo, but they have everything from little cottages, if you will, to 3-story condos like the one we're in today. Florida State family owned and operated, 30-plus units in coastal Pinellas County, everything from beach cottages, like I said, luxury condos, and everything in between. Launch special is underway. More on that at the end of the segment. I'll tell you a little bit more about all of that. I know we have, Tom, I do think it's fitting if you want to put up the sunset picture we took last night. And there, that's me in the right corner of that picture. Tom took it from the Tiki Bar there. We were forced to facilitate a visit to the Tiki Bar and have a lovely meal as the sun set. It was gorgeous. And that's the kind of views you get around here where we're just 2-minute walk.
You did not have a margarita. You did not.
Certainly would never. And good times. That could be you guys. And for 15% off with the launch code JCS. More again on that later. But that setting, that sun setting, feels apt for today.
Yeah.
The sun is setting on the ACC. Not just Florida State's time in the ACC, the ACC. Now, as it's currently, constructed
as a power conference.
As a power conference, yeah.
Yeah.
I do think what you'll start to...
It's a shame.
I can hear the devastation in your voice.
It's a shame.
Look, man, I don't know. I said it in the first hour with Ira. There will be plenty of people who disagree with me. There are elements, I suppose, that could have maybe gone better. But I just don't know how you can't look at this as anything other than a huge, huge win. You're never, when there are lawsuits and complicated ones at that, it is the reason both sides usually want to settle is the fear of the most devastating result. That if this goes south for us, baby, we're in deep trouble here. And as in, like, we'll never be the same. We have fundamentally altered our course. And so the ACC feels the weight of that. Yeah. And Florida State feels the weight of that. And both sides negotiate under that umbrella, understanding, hey, look, man, you might win. You might win, and we're done. We might win, and you're done. And both know that that was a distinct possibility. And that's why this was never going to go to the distance. We knew that. We said that. Lawyers came on our show and said, yeah, this isn't going to go to the distance. I think a lot of us wanted the more salacious aspects to come to light.
But they also said that Florida State has made a case.
A very real case.
A couple of the lawyers that you spoke to and I spoke to at the beginning of this process said, there's more teeth here than I thought there was going to be.
Correct.
And this is the product of those teeth.
I had an attorney in Charlotte reach out to me and say, when I read through this, there's enough here for the ACC to go, we might have a problem on our hands.
Well, part one was the re-up in 2027.
Yeah.
That was part one of it. That was news. Nobody knew that.
Nobody knew
that. And I thought when Florida State lobbed that out there, look, I'm not saying lawyers never lie, but in that situation, I thought, surely somebody would have known about that.
Right.
But it was never refuted. I was waiting for the ACC to refute and say that's technically not true, and here's why. No, man, you heard nothing from the ACC office refuting that claim. And once that was legitimate, and you realize that it's real, that ESPN got a 2-year extension to think about what they want to do with the ACC. Holy crap! Now you've got a little bit of legal maneuvering to be able to help yourself out in the state of Florida.
Yeah, and again, I know it's an oversimplification on my part. But if I just word it this way, and this is accurate, everything I'm about to say is accurate. If I just word it this way, I just don't know how you wouldn't look at this, at least see this with, the eye of some modicum of success. You get more money right now, which is what you wanted. You get out earlier than the 2036 date that was supposedly ironclad. Not just you get out before 2036, you get out if you want at the end of 2029 for less than $100 million. Not $550 million.
Right.
And it's not 2036. It's less than 100, probably a lot less. It keeps dropping with every year that we are here. And you make more money now just for being you, because it's a new revenue distribution model. So it's not just the success initiative, which is that if you kick ass on the field, you get paid more. Got it. Or on the court or whatever.
Right.
It's because your brand is bigger than anybody else's brand in this league. The exception, Clemson's right there with you, but that's it. And you get that money because you're going to procure those ratings.
Yeah.
You play Alabama first game of the year.
Yeah, exactly. You are, yes, it's a layup. They're giving you a layup in this situation. I was a staunch absolutist on getting out, like now. I hate this conference. I hate it. And you laugh at me sometimes, like you just did a moment ago. I really hate this conference.
I know you do.
And
I'm not a fan, but it doesn't consume me.
The freeloader thing has been a bugaboo of mine since WTSM.
I haven't liked it either, but
I really, but this, we often talked about what's the number. And we thought openly, is it 300 million? Because they're saying 6 and it's 100 for the exit fee. Is it 3? Is it 275? Is it 350? Do you need private equity to get you there? How are you going to do this?
I don't want private equity. It's a devil.
I heard you and I are talking about that. I don't think you need it because I'm sure you could finance this out. Remember the fee that was paid to the the Big 12 for Texas and Oklahoma to leave was $50 million for 1 year early exit. And it was against future disbursements.
Right.
So it wasn't, I need 50 million lump sum liquid cash right here, right now. I don't think you would need that type of private equity to get out there. But we said, what's the number? And in this case, let's just say that you want to look at the revenue gap between us and Florida. Keep it simple. Over the next 4 seasons, after this one, 20 million. I'm just going to ballpark it there. 20 million. And you could call it 5 years. So call it 100 million for the revenue gap over the next 5 years. Less than $100 million to leave. We'll call it 90. So here's the number: $190 million to leave, and not all of it is liquid. That is what it cost you to leave the ACC. I didn't think you could do that without winning the case outright. That's why today I'm actually quite pleased with this outcome. I can't believe that we're going to be able to get out at $190 million when it's all said and done, because I'm looking at that revenue gap as a cost. That is a cost between now and then.
Well, and I will also say, look, it's not without a negative or two. I mean, there are a couple of negatives in this, and that is that every year you're here and you're not in one of the Power 2, your brand does take a hit.
Yeah.
And it is going to be used against you in recruiting. It is currently being used against you in recruiting. I don't think you'll be at peak efficiency recruiting the way that Florida State has proven to be able to recruit when they're operating as such until you get out of here. Until you get out of here, you will not.
Yep.
You will not win those battles in the manner that you have to have a number 1 class, a number 2 class. But
if you think about it, though, you're only really operating at that deficit for the next 2 to 3 cycles, 3 at most, probably the next 2 cycles. Because what you can do is you can pitch a kid in 2028 that by the time you're an upperclassman, young man, you'll be playing in this conference. You'll be playing in the Big Ten. You'll be playing in the SEC. So that pitch is real at that point. Right now, if you're a 2026 kid, you ain't going to see that day. No. You're not going to be here on campus for that moment. So that is where you take the hit. Next year, you'd have to be a 4th or 5th year player to be in a new conference. So you're still going to take a bit of a hit on 2027 kids. So you get 2028 kids. Now you can show them all the logos that you rolled out, because I think that announcement's coming sooner than later about where we're going.
I'd love that to be the case. I think, too, you are going to be able to offset or mitigate some of the disadvantages you have by still being in this league with the facility upgrades. I do think that showing the kids the football-only facility, which is state-of-the-art and gorgeous, coupled with what they've done with the stadium, you might be able to offset some of the negative recruiting and the verbiage surrounding your program being an also-ran, because we won't look like one. Now, listen, this is the other thing. And everybody knows this. This is just stating the obvious. It's kind of a mandate. But, man, you can't be out here half-stepping when it comes to, your program, how well you play. Basketball's got to get this hire right. We got to get this thing turned around. Football cannot have what we just had. That goes without saying. But you can't be out here half-stepping with football either. Don't give me a bunch of 7-5 nonsense. Let's get moving.
Well, you know when the money's coming. And so if you know when that paycheck is coming, you can patch things together until, that following Friday. You can find a way, because when you're good for it. I'm good for it. Listen, man, I could really use that $30 right now.
Right.
I'm good for it in a week and a half. I'll give you 40 if you give me 30 right now. So you can be emboldened to finance things out if you need to in terms of coaching replacements, overhauls to departments, because when the money is arriving. The one concern I have about today's events, though, looking at the chessboard, you've now set a precedent that conference contracts can pay out different sums of money based on ratings performance. And if I'm Alabama today, I'm checking with my lawyers to see, can I have a look at perhaps a provision with ESPN when we re-up in 2031 that says if we get better ratings, we get more money? I think that's the next fight that is coming. Is I hope we're not landing in a conference. Now, our brand is strong in any conference, which is good news for us. But I hope that we're not landing in a conference that's changing out its payout structure based on either success initiatives or brand initiatives, and then we've got to go through this whole battle again and prove what we are, and for our own sake.
Well, you're right to assume that the level of greed will not lessen moving forward.
Yeah, if I'm Alabama or Texas today, I'm going, whoa, wait a minute. So now this is a thing? You could do this?
Oh, 100%. And there was an article to that end written in Front Office Sports as well as The Athletic, a year ago, in which they were talking about that very thing, that Georgia, when the ACC showed a willingness, even behind the scenes, to begin to negotiate, for lack of a better term, about different payment structure, brand initiatives. When that became a topic, Kirby Smart and others at Georgia went, you don't say.
Right.
So you're going to be paying Florida State and Clemson more money than you're going to pay Wake and Duke. We get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely get it. So why is Vanderbilt making what they're making?
Today is a bad day for Rutgers. Today is a bad day for Vanderbilt, because they're coming for your money soon. They are. They're at least going to make the argument. Now, the question is, will a conference commissioner be strong enough, or
would probably be strong enough,
a sport commissioner, if you could ever imbue one with the power to say, look, man, that was a weird deal. It was the ACC. It was nonsense. They were desperate. They didn't need to open up grant of rights provisions on all of our contracts across all the sport. So put your weapons down. We're getting paid equally. We're all making a crap ton of money. Or not.
Well, I would lean towards or not. I don't think so, buddy. I get the sense that, we've seen endless greed across the board. But
in a way, that would be an argument to move to the Big Ten. Because you're more valuable. This is the other argument about redundancy in markets. You're more valuable to the Big Ten, and you would rank if let's say both the SEC and the Big Ten adopted this model of a 60-40 split on brand and ratings. Well, the Big Ten could use you more for those ratings, because you open up a brand new time zone and part of the country to where you're relevant more often.
Yeah, you'd be behind Ohio State. You'd probably be behind Michigan. That's it.
Right. You're on par with Oregon and USC and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. I was trying to think about
brand power.
Brand power. Yeah. I think that's true. Yeah. You're probably just behind.
In the SEC, you're probably fifth. I mean, it's not like you're way down the list, but
no.
But you're more valuable to the Big Ten. I wonder, now that Pandora's box is open in the ACC, if I was Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, or Texas today, I'm going, well, hang on now. allow me to retort.
Yeah, it's hard for me to. It's funny. I know why they're in the conversation, but I roll my eyes every time Texas comes up. I'm like, come on now. You've been good for an hour. You haven't done a thing in 50 years. Stop this. Well, that's not true. They won the national championship with Vince. But, yeah, other than that little blip on the radar.
Yeah, but if, look, the Success Initiative thing is worth, a nickel, then it sounds like this particular brand initiative is worth 2 dimes. It's worth 4 times. Like, it's probably worth 3 or 4-fold. So for Texas, it doesn't matter about the success part of it.
Correct.
We're going to rate. We rate like crazy.
They absolutely do. Again, according to sources, for those that don't know, the settlement includes 2 key objectives, writes Pete Thamel, establishing a new revenue distribution model based on viewership and a change in the financial penalties for exiting the league's grant of rights prior to its conclusion in 2036. These are both huge wins for Florida State.
Yeah.
The new revenue distribution model, brand initiative, based on a 5-year rolling average of TV ratings. Though some logistics of this formula remain tricky, including how to properly average games on the unrated ACC network or other subscription channels.
Sorry, Pitt and whoever they played last year for that first place in the ACC.
SMU,
that's right.
It was huge. The brand initiative will be funded through a split in the league's TV revenue, with 40% distributed evenly amongst the 14 longstanding members and 60% going towards the brand initiative and distributed. Florida State and Clemson.
Yeah, here's what's interesting to me, and this was part of the video we were watching as they recorded it, the staff video on Warchant TV with Ira and Gene and Aslan. And, the report at ESPN is that you could earn upwards of $15 million. That's Thamel's reporting. Ira, in this case, saying that it could be closer to 20. I find that interesting. I think that is a very educated guess on Ira's part. Wouldn't you agree that that's not coming from nowhere?
Yeah.
No, it's not 15. I think it actually is closer to 20. So if you're talking about, again, 20 on the brand initiative part, and another 5 or 6 or 7 from the success initiative part, I mean, you kind of had done the job here, because you likely were going to have to take a partial share when you first make that move over to the Big Ten or the SEC, at least for a transitional period. Now you don't have to do that and cut a check to get out there in the first place. This is financially responsible, what they're doing right here.
It's a huge I'm looking at some of these numbers, by the way. We'll have some more to talk about this. I just knew as this was coming up, we were going to start to see people's reactions throughout today.
Yeah.
And we're starting to see some of them. And I just got done reading one that is from a Big Ten source that says this is a massive win for Florida State.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is, again, what I was talking about earlier. I don't see how you can see it any other way.
Well, this is, yes, not only was the GOR not ironclad, it was apparently vulnerable enough that the ACC just gave away everything. They did. They gave, because now you have an end date on the life of your existence as a power conference, as we said at the beginning. You now have put an end date on your existence as a power player.
They're going to merge with another conference and be a much more dominant basketball conference at some point, or better basketball conference. It's going to be fascinating to see where this all goes. Clemson will be gone. I imagine Miami and Virginia and North Carolina will all be gone.
Yep.
I don't. It's not our concern, but what the ACC does next, they got 5 years to figure it out. Basically, that's it.
Bye.
Check out aboveandbeyondvr.com. Save 15% with the launch special code JCS. Get it done. So we did find out, and we haven't had a conversation about it. And now it gets interesting because it's going to change the nature of our relationship when we head down there. But the ACC kickoff was announced July 22nd through the 24th at the Hilton Charlotte Uptown, place we've been before. We'll be again and make our way to Charlotte, North Carolina. And I wonder how all the news of the day is going to affect the howdies. Listen, because there's a lot going on here. And a lot of this information we're still getting trickling in here as the show is going on, and we'll have more on it throughout the week, obviously. Of course, news breaks while we're out of town, but that's okay. Things happen. We're here to cover it. We're good. I feel like, at least initially, from what we're reading, what we're hearing, what we heard from Ira, what we continue to look at and find from the Thamels of the world and others that are tweeting and writing this story, is that this is going to be perceived, depending on where you look at it from, as a win-win for everybody. Meaning Jim Phillips is going to get to save face here to some extent.
You know.
He is. He is, right? And I think Florida State, and again, we're working hard to find the exact numbers. Got some ideas, but we need to see the exact numbers that
available too, because it's not fait accompli that you're getting X amount of dollars,
right?
Because it's going to be a rolling 5-year rating thing, so,
right?
So
you need to see what the numbers are relative to the annual payouts in the SEC and the Big Ten, and how close do you get to that number? How much of the gap was closed today?
Right.
How, that is the biggest thing. And very specifically, not roundabout, hey, it's this much or that. We think it's going to be, because we can all speculate on that based on what we have.
Yeah. I think what it does is it relieves a lot of pressure and tension in the building. You almost go to the ACC meetings with joy. I'm going to
people hugging. Hey guys, good to see you. God, it's so nice we ended this spat.
Right. It's that there's an expiration date on your relationship. There's freedom in that though.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have to see your sorry ass anymore here coming up soon. So why don't we go hit the bar and have a drink?
Let's have a few. Let's hang out. It's going to be nice because and I know we're gone in 2029.
Right.
Now, you, Wake Forest, will not be leaving anywhere. You're going to be right here, and you're going to be making less money. But that's how this should work.
Well, I think we should call today Victory Over GOR Day. Today should be called Victory Over Grant of Rights Day, because once upon a time,
it was 2036, and it was
ironclad.
Couldn't get out.
Come on now, buddy. Ironclad.
Turns out it had teeth.
Right.
That were not ironclad.
Right.
But there were teeth.
But it wasn't ironclad. Never say never. Never. Everything's a negotiation. Always. At all times. This is yet another lesson.
There's always a number. There's always a number.
Right. And you'll be able to walk around and see the media from the Triangle that often spoke about the ironclad nature of the GOR, and you'll be able to give them a smug smile as you walk to your Radio Row station this July at the Hilton Uptown Charlotte and say, ironclad, huh?
If I had a shirt that said not so ironclad, that would be great. Just a shirt that said not so ironclad. I didn't even have to say anything. I'm just wearing it while I'm talking to somebody.
Yeah.
They're looking right at it.
That's right.
Like I have breasts.
Not so ironclad, or not so ironclad, huh? With a question mark. Not so ironclad, huh?
Yeah.
And then we could find a face of somebody. Maybe it's berries and cream. He just. That's on the back of the shirt.
Berries and cream. Berries and cream.
But that is, as I'm thinking about hopping in the car. Maybe we should spring for a flight this year to go up there. But
yes, we are. I'm not doing that anymore. That is a god doggone drive, man.
It's the drive back. It's always about the drive back.
The drive back is a killer. How many times have you and I gotten in that car together to drive back and just been like,
yeah, yep.
You got to mentally steel yourself for that drive back.
The thing is, behind the scenes stuff, I don't know that we're going to be able to get that totally expensed. So if you want to sponsor Not So Ironclad week on the JCS, where we go to the ACC, jump on board.
Yeah.
Your shirt can have Not So Ironclad and then somebody's business logo there for all of the interviews.
It would be great.
I think that shirt needs to get made. I really do.
Not So Ironclad.
Not So Ironclad.
That's a funny shirt. But I just think that this is going to be, both sides are going to massage this to say whatever, you know what I mean?
Oh, it's a total save face moment for everybody involved. I think you're right. Once we hear more specifics about the nature of the deal, and maybe does ESPN kick in a little bit here or there, remember, this is something worth pointing back to for context with the Texas and Oklahoma situation. Like you heard that, maybe ESPN helped facilitate and float a few million here or there.
Correct.
To help pay for the exit fee, or maybe they paid all of it, or, like those types of things. Was there anything like that made available to Florida State or Clemson for them to be, good citizens for the next 3 or 4 seasons? Because look, last week's news about the lawsuit and the Florida Supreme Court ruling, like, hey man, you need to proceed in the state of Florida, might have influenced an extra concession to come our way. That's going to be fun to hear about in the months to come, is the backstory and just what is what is reportable for Alford and Collins to declare that they won this particular round.
Well, I certainly remember after reading the story of the Oklahoma-Texas situation with ESPN, I think it was $40 million, something. It was
almost as though the whole thing was paid off. Their exit fee was paid off.
We got you. We got you. You know,
right.
We want this to happen, so we'll help facilitate this.
And was there a concession afforded to Florida State that was not afforded to Clemson? Because right now, I mean, the article as it came out this morning close to lunchtime, it was, that Florida State and Clemson are going to do this. And Thamel's tweet, Florida State and Clemson, like joined at the hip that they are going to get. This is what they're going to receive. But remember, we started our fight long before they did. Do we get extra concessions? Are more of our legal fees covered than theirs because we had another year or so of legal fees to consider? I wonder if it is identical what we receive versus Clemson or maybe even some of the other institutions that are going to be able to benefit off of the brand initiative and the ratings initiative.
Well, North Carolina and Miami owe Florida State a thank you.
Yeah.
And anybody else that's got a chance to get out of here.
Yeah.
And I think those two schools specifically will try.
That's another shirt that we can have for another day, which is the North Carolina game when they come to town next. And
you're welcome.
You're welcome. It's very simple. Or we go up there. Actually, that's the better one, is if we play in Chapel Hill one final time. It's like, you're welcome. It's a great shirt.
They won't see it that way.
Then delusional.
Yeah, they won't see it that way. But we all know what happened here. At the same time, it's a long time to be at a deficit. It is still another 4 years of annually being down
some deficit
to some degree to the SEC and the Big Ten. But I do like that. Listen, I've said for a while now, and it's getting solved, and I can't keep bringing this up, but because they had to put all of their focus into these facilities, these upgrades, the lawsuit, all the things, basketball was allowed to languish and matter not at all. It didn't receive any attention. There was no focus whatsoever on the state of that basketball program. And with this initiative, you have to be good.
Yeah. Right.
You have to be good at these sports to make that gap shrink.
Right. Yes. So
it's imperative that you be great at football, obviously. Starts there. But you have to be good at basketball. You can't be pussyfooting anymore with basketball.
In two ways. You've got a rolling average of ratings for the brand initiative, which is the 60-40 split that we're talking about, right? So that's one part of it, but then the success, the winning thing is a separate part that is still in existence.
Yes.
This is just part of the deal. But being good gets you better ratings. Being good gets you a success initiative on top of the brand initiative. This is I'm sure if you're driving around town right now, you're like, my head's spinning. I know, carry the one. And there's a lot of, contortions that you need to do to really wrap your mind and wrap your body around what's going on here. But if you are good, in short, in football and basketball, you're going to get better TV ratings, so you get higher payouts. And then you also get the success initiative. So, when they're throwing around money like you could get $15 million extra for getting good TV ratings, all right, it doesn't stop there. Because if you win the ACC and you go to the college football playoff, now you're talking about another, I don't know, I'm just going to throw numbers out there, 5, 7, whatever it is. And if you're saying that you're getting $22 million more than you would have under the old circumstances in the old deal, and the gap is 30 or 40, all right, well, now you've just halved it. And that's not nothing.
You get 4 for the quarterfinals and another 4 for the semis. That we know. Yeah. That's what you get.
Right.
Now, this is why people get mad about the automatic buy for SEC and Big Ten teams, because you're instantly getting $4 million. You're going to the quarters because you didn't have to play the first round. Yeah, so there's that. When it gets to 16 teams and all that.
Right. But then the success initiative, I think you still have to chop the pot a little bit. Like you keep most of it. So there's probably some math to be done there. If the ACC nets 4, you net whatever percentage of that for being successful. But yeah, I mean, you're at least going to be able to, when you go up to Charlotte in July, know what the task is for the program. You at least have a number to attack. That's the hardest part here, was everything has been nebulous in college football, like everything. You don't know how much exactly to a dollar and to a cent you're paying out an NIL for your quarterback, or you're paying out an NIL for the defensive end high school recruit, or that big time transfer. So you don't really know what the number is there. the number is always a year or two behind fiscal year wise for what the SEC gets or what the Big Ten gets. And you see that report, it comes out in the spring, but you kind of forget what they made. And then here's the report on what you're going to make, and you're projected to make this next year. You at least now know here was the gap, and we'll call it 40 or whatever. It's 40. You could make up to, and I'm throwing just a random number out there, you could make up to 24 extra. Like, now go win.
Yeah.
So it's like all this talk is done.
Go.
Now go win.
Yeah, to reiterate that Thamel article, sources suggest Clemson and Florida State would be amongst the biggest winners of the brand-based distribution, though North Carolina and Miami are others that are expected to make a higher payout. Georgia Tech was actually the ACC's highest-rated program in 2024, based in part on a Week 0 game against Florida State.
Yeah, and the Georgia game.
And then the 7 overtime thrower against Georgia in the final Friday of the regular season.
Well, okay, but this is also where you set yourself up to succeed. Are you glad we didn't cancel the Alabama game now?
Right.
Because
right.
That's a layup. That's a Week 1 game with Alabama.
That's a massive rating.
I mean, my God.
That'll be a massive rating.
And Miami's in business, too, because I believe
Notre
Sunday
Dame.
of that weekend they play Notre Dame.
Yeah, they got Notre Dame. Yeah.
So next year we've got Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Miami, Florida. Like, yeah, we're going to rate. You know, even if we're not great, we're going to rate, which means you're going to rake in the money.
And just go ahead and be great.
Would be nice. Would be nice.
Like, go ahead and just add a little spice to the conversation by being great. Wouldn't that be fun?
Well, and as long as they don't cancel the games from the SEC side, because they, you know, now they're adding a 9th conference game. That would be the only concern there. Well, you should get Georgia.
Yeah. Well,
for back-to-back seasons as well.
I think that's going to get canceled.
You think so?
Well, because of the 9th game, I do think that probably gets canceled. I may be wrong.
I mean, you only get 3 other tune-ups if you're in that conference.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to keep that game, but they might. I mean, I would be all right if they didn't.
Who knows what they're going to be? I mean, they'll be good, but to what degree?
If Kirby's there, they're going to be good. I don't know if they'll be national championship good, but they're going to be good. And I don't know. I mean, we don't have to do that to ourselves every year, even though
we don't. But if under this brand initiative thing, it makes you want to schedule more aggressively, doesn't it?
The problem is if you're on the wrong end of ass kickings, the brand tarnishes.
That is true.
You know, like, I'm not saying that we're guaranteed to be on the wrong end, but as we sit here today, we are a decisive underdog against Alabama, which we already know that number.
Yeah.
And we will be, you know,
more than a touchdown. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. We'll see. I do think, though, if we have to be here, you said it, even remove the Georgia game. You're going to now be playing, because of this initiative, you're going to be playing Notre Dame a lot more frequently. Yep. Notre Dame's playing us and Clemson a lot moving forward.
Right there. And there's going to be, in all likelihood, 14 or 16 seats at the playoff table. Like,
there's we're only getting 2.
Yeah, you're right, of course. There's a part of me, as I'm trying to take in all this information, that's still disappointed, because I thought I was pretty certain in my own head that we would get out sooner than this. But I do like the resolution part of it, that we don't have to keep constantly wondering what the hell is going to happen. And, oh, crap, did you remember that in North Carolina there's an appellate court that's ruling on something today? Let's make sure that we get the judge's ruling.
Well, I like seeing the finish line.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I do like seeing, like, it's a known commodity now. 2029, you can ride.
Yeah.
It's 2025. That's not that far away.
Which means, in theory, just looking irresponsibly ahead in time, you could, in theory, announce your conference location soon. If you have an end date, you declare to the ACC, if all this information is accurate, Thamel's like, oh, you can leave for under $100 million. That was the beginning of the Board of Trustees meeting stuff that started this whole domino effect.
Was that if it were that, we would just leave?
We just cut the check. Okay, so you could announce today, if you wanted to, that we're going to leave.
But how great would it be if on the same day this is resolved, there's an announcement, there's an article, Florida State has announced that they will be joining the SEC.
Well, they've got the board meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Who the hell knows? They might. But then you could also, in theory, announce your new conference home, like, as soon as you want, and say it's starting in 2029.
Well,
it just means more. Ugh, I'm puking in my mouth.
Stop doing that. Don't do that.
They'd have to bend the knee for that press release, though.
Could go to the Big Ten and not have to say it just means more.
Yeah, but now you don't have to dare to dream. Now you know that you're going to be.
You're going to be.
Yeah. Oh, and watch those articles. And maybe we can look at those national media people and say Florida State is not wanted elsewhere.
Yeah.
and you could look at the McMurphys of the world when we get to Charlotte.
Well, he's not the one that makes me mad. You know the guy that makes me mad.
I do, but he penned that article in Action Network last year about
he said sources say
that Florida State wouldn't have a home. That was his. He's in on it.
Handing out nonsense. What's not nonsense is Above and Beyond Vacation Rentals. We're at one right now, a luxury condo. It is glorious. Look at this behind me. This is our porch right now as we overlook the water, and you could too. I would invite you today. Get on it. You've been talking with the wife. You've been talking with your family and friends about meeting up for a beach weekend or a week or a family reunion. And you can avoid the VRBO and the Airbnb middleman fees by going directly to our friends at Above and Beyond Vacation Rentals. That's right. Go to aboveandbeyondvr.com to book your rental. They've got everything from these quaint little cottages, luxury condos, places right on the beach, just off the beach, depending on where you want to be. They have all of it. Right now, if you use the code JCS, you get 15% off. Now, that's just this week.
Yep.
It's going to drop down to 5% after that. So 15%, you are saving some serious cash. Matt and Jen are booked solid through March. So act now for April all the way through 2026.
They got more than 30 properties. So yes, that tells you how busy it is down here. This is the season. You grew up around here. This is when all the snowbirds come down. But they got more than 30 properties. And again, different experiences. If you want to be closer to Dunedin and you want to go to walk to Main Street, there's that. If you want to be on the beach, you're like, the hell with that. I want to be under an umbrella or tanning and just playing beach volleyball for a week. There's that too. Everything in between.
Yeah. So a lot of options, but one option that lasts only this week is the 15% off with the launch code JCS. So use code JCS for 15% off. And we want to thank Matt and Jen for having us down here, checking out these properties while we're doing live shows. Good stuff. Aboveandbeyondvr.com. Where do you need to go?
Little did we know that there would be a massive bit of breaking news when we were just trying to kick back and put our feet up. We looked at the calendar and said, well, this is
a perfect time to do it.
There's nothing going on.
Spring training. Great.
Right.
Yeah.
Everything's going on.
Well, the news broke today. If you're just hopping in the car and you're what are they talking about? Florida State and Clemson are going to vote tomorrow on an agreement that would ultimately result in the settlement of the 4 ongoing lawsuits between the schools and the ACC. And at first glance, you'd say, I don't want them to settle. You know, a lot of people were saying, fight this to the hilt. We talked to attorneys initially when Florida State filed the lawsuit. There's been plenty of conjecture on our show, just kind of trying to first guess what might happen. And we said, basically, look, I don't think either side really wants this to go to court. They don't really want this to go to trial, I should say, that they're not going to play it out to the end, that there'll be some sort of agreement, because there was too much risk involved for both parties, an awful lot to lose for both parties. And so you figured somewhere along the way, some sort of deal would get hammered out. And you just hope that it would certainly be in your favor.
At least 2 parties were at risk. You could say that ESPN was at risk, and that's a third party that's very, very important.
Yeah.
Because this would affect their contract language and all other deals that they have. So a lot of people had a lot at stake.
Yeah, and if you ever got to Discovery and everything else, a lot of people, there are emails that don't need to see the light of day from the standpoint of certain administrators, I mean, typically that's the case.
Yeah.
So I wondered when this day would come, and I had my doubts that it would be this favorable. I believe this to be a win. I think Florida State won. I said that each of the first 2 hours. I said it when I talked to Ira in hour 1. I would strongly encourage you to go back and listen to that interview. Also, his talk that he had with Gene and Aslan on the website, warchant.com. I would strongly suggest you go and listen to that and watch that as well. Obviously, we're going to be vetting this for some time. More and more information will come out. And as it does, it'll help further illuminate what we're talking about. But I just don't know how this could be seen as a loss for Florida State. And it's not. So far, if you look around the country and the people assessing what this deal means, most have pointed out that it's a massive success for Florida State and Clemson and anybody else that really wants to get out of this conference. And the bottom line is this: you're going to make more money than you were last year. And the grant of rights is not so ironclad. And you can leave before 2036. And there's a new revenue distribution model.
Yeah.
And there's so really all the things that you were trying to hammer out based on what you represented in this conference, the brand that you were, the cachet that you had built up, the success that you had had to help keep the ACC afloat in the sport of football, along with Clemson, obviously. That all got recognized in this deal. Mm-hmm. I mean, they said instead of pound sand, which is what they were saying every year at Amelia Island, they said, you're right. Oh, they won't word it that way, folks, but that's what they did. They said, you're right. They said, we're kind of screwed here. We know it long term. We'd like a little short-term security. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you more money. And we're going to make it so that it's a layup for you to get more money because of your brand. You are already going to have some of the highest rated games on television next year. We know that. You play Alabama, you play Clemson, you play, any year that you play Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Florida, and Miami, you're going to have these big ratings moments. And thus, on a rolling 5-year average of television ratings, the schools that benefit the most, obviously, are the ones that hit those benchmarks. Well, Florida State's always going to hit that benchmark. They're a massive brand. Clemson will too, and just to a lesser degree, some of the other schools. So there's that. Then there's the actual money that we're going to give you on top of that for having success. Now, this is where it's on Florida State to go out and make do. You got to go play. You got to go win games. You got to get this thing really moving again in the right direction. A lot of pressure on Mike. A lot of pressure on the two Mikes. Mike Alford, Mike Norvell. There's a lot of pressure. You got to get this basketball hire right. You got to get it so that this team in this program is not just meandering about in the ACC, but actually doing some things. And then on the football field, it's obvious. You got to get this thing moving in the right direction again to further enhance your brand. You are now a glorified free agent. And everybody knows when your contract's up. Everybody knows that in 2029, at the end of the year, you're free to leave. And you could do so for less than $100 million. Well, if you're going to get out of this conference for less than $100 million, instead of the 530, 450, 702, whatever numbers we've heard bantied about that would have cost you to try to get out before 2036, if you're going to get out for less than $100 million, and in the interim, while you're here for the next 4 years, you're going to get paid a hell of a lot more to close the gap in revenue distribution between you and the SEC schools and you and the Big Ten schools, how could you not see that as a win? Yeah, it would have been great to get out of here yesterday. But it wasn't going to happen, and you had to concede certain elements to get what you wanted, and Florida State did get what they wanted, I think.
Yeah, I'm looking at it from the ACC's perspective, and they decided to put an end date on their existence as a power institution, or as a power conference. Like, they decided, okay, this is how much longer we can live as a power conference. Like, you got them to do that. You got them to come to the negotiating table and do that. It went from ironclad to 60% of your revenue is going to get split up based upon your ratings. There's no precedent for this. I'm not trying to be a PR agent for Florida State. God knows I haven't been in this situation. But in this instance, there's no television sports rights deal in history that I know of that has a provision like this. I don't know of any. Based upon your ratings, you get a cut. Certainly not in college football. That doesn't exist until today. It just started today. So they got the ACC and ACC lawyers to work on a deal that allows for them to get money based on ratings, and they thought it up in a room, and it became contract. It became something they're going to ratify tomorrow. Yeah. That's hard to do. Usually you have to dip into a charter to go find something to open the door to something else. Not, hey, we just want to make this thing up where because of ratings we get a lot of money. And it wasn't, well, you're going to get a $2 million bonus if you finish first. It's like, no, on the total percentage of television revenue, here's how we're going to divvy it all up. That is an unbelievable thing.
It's huge. There are similar things in individual sports, like in golf.
Sure.
We now know those things exist, where if you're one of the most
PIP.
If you're a more popular player, and they can gauge that based on your social media hits and your YouTube downloads and your, then you can get a lot more money from the tour. You get a big bonus at the end of the year. In fact, a huge $15-20 million bonus.
This is it's just, I'm thinking about it, wrapping my mind around it, because you would not have enough votes for people to agree to this. In the conference members, you wouldn't have the votes. You're just taking a straw poll. Not everybody would support this measure. This to me means that the lawyers got with the university presidents
and said, hey,
we're going to lose. or there's a real chance that we lose.
Yeah, I can't tell you that we're going to win. How about that?
You can take more money, less money than you're making right now, but more than you're about to make after this is all over.
And more than you would ever get if they just
Right, for another 4 or 5 years, or we can go run it down to the wire and you're going to walk away with nothing in all likelihood because they've got momentum here. Like that's Boston College wouldn't vote for this. Wake Forest wouldn't vote for this. North Carolina State, because North Carolina has divided, allegiances. They wouldn't vote for this. So this means that lawyers got in a room with them and said, you have no choice. This is the best option of a bunch of bad options. Take the deal.
I think we always hoped that that's the way it would go, is my point. Like that at some point, somebody would talk sense to them and say, look, man, as much as you don't want it to be true, and everybody loves their school. Everybody loves their school. And you shouldn't feel shame about that. Everybody loves their school. But man, in the real world, Wake Forest is not rating in the same way that Clemson or Florida State does. In the real world, NC State or Virginia Tech or Syracuse or Boston College or anybody not named Clemson is not rating as highly as Florida State.
What you got today, and I bask in this, I bask in the warmth of this, I taste the tears and how salty they are. Wake Forest president went to battle through the media, saying that we're the fastest growing brand and this is an overrated thing. And many other university presidents didn't want their name next to it, but they took pot shots at Florida State and said that they're this or they're that or they're not this or they're not that. What you just got today was confirmation that in a room somewhere over the last week, Wake Forest and Boston College and Syracuse and NC State and insert your Tobacco Road institution, your old ACC institution here, they all said we're worth less than you. We are less worthy than you are at Florida State. And so here is what we're going to do. Now, they can still win with ratings and brand initiatives and all that kind of stuff. So they could still win in this case, but they know. And you got them to admit that they're worth less than we are. After all this tough talk, you got them to tuck their tail between their legs and sign a piece of paper and say, all right, fine.
And to that end, the ACC Board of Directors scheduled to hold a call tomorrow to go over the settlement terms. Florida State has a call, a board meeting, to present the terms at noon tomorrow. Clemson is going to do the same exact thing. All three boards have to agree to the settlement for it to move forward. But most believe that will be agreed upon. And I can tell you that there's no way this story gets released if they didn't have confirmation that all three sides are going to say yes to
Nobody wins if there's an 11th hour back out. Nobody wins in this situation.
Right.
Yeah.
So according to Thamel's story on ESPN, the settlement accomplishes two key objectives. You establish a new revenue distribution model based on viewership. That's what Tom and I have just been talking about. A change in the financial penalties for leaving the league's grant of rights prior to its conclusion in 2036. So not only are you going to get more money, which is what you wanted, based on the revenue distribution model that's changed based on ratings, viewership ratings, you also no longer are paying this severely penal exit fee that was really the reason to some extent for the lawsuit to begin with, which was that lawyers basically told FSU, this doesn't seem enforceable. This is gross. This is over the top. And remember, we learned about that in the contract law discussion. If I buy a car from you, you sell a car.
When you spoke with the lawyer from North Carolina. He's good.
It basically said, look, if you buy a car from me, I post it on whatever, Facebook Marketplace or something, and it's $7,000. But I say, if you don't pick it up by 1 p.m. on Sunday, it's $78,000. And I show up at 102 and you're like, $78,000. Well, that's not fair. That's not right. That's not a fair contract.
Right.
That's where the courts agree with you. It's not a fair contract.
Well,
it's too severe.
Yeah, and let's revisit some of those terms. We knew that the exit fee was, I believe, 3 times the annual revenue payout for the ACC. That's what it was supposed to be by the charter. Then there was the grant of rights on top of it,
which was made it really problematic.
Right. So, but that number was still going up on the front end. The exit fee, as you're getting paid out $40 and $45 and $47 and $50 million a year. So you were looking at, if let's just say the grant of rights went away and you were just paying the exit fee, $120, $150 million, $180 million by the time you hit 2030. Now you're not even paying that. You're paying a fraction of what the charter said, which is the exit fee is 3 times the league revenue distribution per school.
Mm-hmm.
So you're paying less than that. The grant of rights fee is gone.
Yeah.
And then this is reduced from what the charter would demand that it would be. If it's going to be under $100 million, I mean, my God, that's 1.5 times or 1.8 times what your revenue distribution model is going to.
What it means is Florida State will exercise it and walk.
Yeah, I mean,
in 2029.
I hope it's a part of the board vote tomorrow. I hope that you ratify this. Does anybody have points or motions on the floor? Yes, Chairman Collins, I'd like to move that we distribute a letter of notifying that the ACC that we intend to leave in 2030. Do I hear a second? Yes, Chairman Collins, I second that motion. Let's vote on it. Do we want to send them the letter? Oh, aye. Yeah. All right. I hope that's what we do.
You do it, and then the next conversation is the one we all want to have.
Yeah.
Now it's tangible. Now it's very real. Now it's, okay, guys, you want to join the SEC or the Big Ten? Because you're going to one of those two. You're going to either Fox or ESPN. And let them fight.
Yep.
And for all the writers, all the journalists out there that said Florida State wouldn't have a home, doesn't need a home, can't find a home, watch the bidding war behind the closed doors begin. Florida State's going to get a full share because it's timed out right. We would not have, and this is a part where I will acknowledge, because those TV deals haven't been done yet, the new ones coming up. If we had been, say, granted the freedom to walk tomorrow, we might have had a problem on our hands because I don't think the SEC would want to add Florida State right now.
Not at a full share.
Not at a full share. We wouldn't get it.
So you might be making more now with this success and brand initiative thing in terms of raw dollars than you would have made with the SEC on a partial share. And you would have had to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to even be in the position to make less than you're going to make now. Like, that's why this is a total win. But I do think, and we'll never know, and I'm sure people have opinions on it, I think the Big Ten would have paid us a full share if we could have gotten free
immediately
in court. Let's say we won it in court. We're a brand new part of the country for them to be able to market. I think that would have been a full share. And if you're just reading the basic tea leaves, this seems like we're going to go to the Big Ten right now because we can exercise our exit at the time
that their contract is due.
There's a 1-year delay for the SEC.
Yeah, they come to market late.
So if you're just looking at the tea leaves, like, it would suggest heavy lean to Big Ten, but this comes back to the original discussion we had. Big Ten interests should scare the SEC into acting sooner.
I've always guessed that that's how this would play out. I got that right. Look, what's going to happen is the Big Ten's going to show interest because they want global dominance, and they will basically have it because they will stretch from California to Florida, and they're going to say, "Oh, nice little cute conference you got there, SEC.
Yep,
we're countrywide. You're buried there in the little southeast." So that's what they'll, that's what they're going to say. Now, if you're the SEC, you say, "No, we can't have all that. We can't have that. Let's add Clemson and Florida State when the time is right. Maybe North Carolina even,
right,
and Virginia,
right. Florida pipe down. Look, we made A&M eat it, and we made LSU eat it, and Arkansas eat it when we opened up the western flank.
Of course they did.
Y'all shut the hell up.
Yeah,
and so allow for this to happen.
That flew out the window a long time ago, man. When they screwed over Texas A&M. After making the promises that they would not.
And LSU really, LSU liked to operate in the West. Into Texas and Oklahoma. Like, geez.
The brand initiative, by the way, is supposed to start this upcoming year. So let's get off our ass and not suck. Start doing some good things here. The brand fund combined with the separate success initiative fund approved in 2023, that one was, is obviously a reward for making the postseason. And it allows teams that, hit certain benchmarks to close the revenue gap with the SEC and the Big Ten. You can bet on a number if you have a great year between your TV ratings and your success initiatives of, around 30 million. That came out of nowhere.
30 million sneezeroonies.
Man alive, that came out of nowhere.
That did.
And 30 million or more annually should you make a deep run, obviously in the college football playoff or the NCAA basketball tournament and lead the way with your television ratings, you could make it up to an extra $30 million, which effectively closes the gap between us and the SEC teams and the Big Ten teams.
To a nominal amount. Yeah.
A working amount.
In this grand scheme, if you can get it down to 10 or a dozen $1 million, you can operate. You can survive that. You can survive that.
Meanwhile, Stanford, Cal, and SMU are taking a reduced portion of TV money over the next 8 years.
Right. That's right. SMU's probably like, damn it. We came here for free and now this place isn't worth crap.
It's falling all around us.
Right.
What do we do? So
they're talking to the Big Ten. They're like, come on now. You want Dallas. You want Dallas-Fort Worth, don't you, Big Ten?
It's going to be fascinating. I have to look at what provisions were written into when SMU joined, because you got to believe that Jim Phillips wasn't like, all right, listen, they're desperate. We're not going to give them anything, but they can join. But also, they can't turn around and screw us, because they're not going to be happy not getting anything.
That's right.
So at some point, they're going to try to leave. So let's put in here that you get nothing, you'll like it, and you can't leave for 65 years. You good? Go, all right, come on in. Come on in. Yeah, come on in. That's the way it's going to work.
Rumble ponies.
Yeah. So Clemson and Florida State will be amongst the biggest winners of the brand-based distribution. It'll be by a lot. Then North Carolina and Miami will follow. Georgia Tech will start to do all right here too. In fact, you read that in the article, by the way. That cracked me up. Georgia Tech was the highest-rated ACC program in 2024. They had that Week 0 game against us over in Ireland that they won. And then they had the game at the end of the year against Georgia, which went 7 overtimes, and they choked. But anyhow, that yeah, man, that's –
yeah, who knew that Georgia Tech could be a winner today? They're like, yay, us. Yeah. All right. And
they're
now
investing too.
They would be attracted to the Big Ten. That is a huge – I think that's a huge win for the Big Ten.
It's also a great school.
It is. It's Atlanta. So you've got a media market that you really want to be in for the Big Ten to expand. Again, there's redundancy in the SEC. It's not to say that redundancy argument isn't true. It's true for Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
They have Atlanta. They've got Georgia. They play their championship game there every year. They've got Atlanta. They're fine. But the Big Ten would be very interested in Atlanta, and Georgia Tech's profile matches exactly what they're looking for.
You can see how where this is all headed. You really can. Florida State family owned, Above and Beyond Vacation Rentals. Thank you so much. Avoid those VRBO and Airbnb middleman fees. Oh, no. Can't have it. Don't have to have it with these guys. Launch special this week. Use the code JCS for 15% off. Above and Beyond VR.com. Above and Beyond VR.com. And away we go, still broadcasting from the gorgeous, look at that water behind me.
The breeze has turned beautifully balmy in the last 15, 20 minutes out here. This is like on another level, man.
It's perfect out here today. We'll be here today, tomorrow, Wednesday. You could be here, as we've told you, all throughout today with the launch of our new sponsor, Above and Beyond. Appreciate them very, very much. Before we sign off today, I'll mention it again, how you can save 15% and all the goodness that comes with it. I'm in a good mood, not just because we're here and the salt is in the air and I hear the seagulls and I'm going to get a chance to see family and some friends and go to a spring training game and all that. But I feel like today was a win for Florida State. The longer the day's gone on, the more I feel that way. And I think ultimately you can start to kind of bring into view the future of the program and what's possible. It's become the impetus for not only just wanting spring to get moving, but I'm impatient when it comes to something that I'm excited about and I'm eagerly anticipating. I think most people are. I just really think Florida State's going to be a much better product on the field this year. And if you couple it with this news today, you start to gain traction. You just gain a little bit of traction. I'm not saying we're going to be great. I don't want people to think I think we're going to go 10-2 or something like that. I don't. But I think we're going to be moving towards a path where that's going to be possible real soon.
I think I'm still in a state of shock that it's over, because you're just concerned about this other storyline with the ACC in the future, the existential crisis for Florida State for so long. I mean, we've been worried about this for longer than the lawsuit was active. How many segments have we done on this topic over the years?
A lot.
And we've got, dozens more, because we have to document tomorrow's board meeting and then the future location and, rumors and announcements of what conference Florida State is going to. Like, that discussion is to come. But today I feel as though this issue is over. You've got a timestamp on when it's over. Florida State's future is secure, right? Like, the Florida State's future is secure, and basking in that is hard to wrap your mind around, because it happened randomly on a Monday in March at 11:30. It's like, done. issue or whatever it was, 10:30, issue over. And so now all there is to do for the most part is to just focus on the football, getting better. Now focus on the program. That's what it used to be. That's what we used to do for a long time. But that always felt like the battle. Whereas the war was about, are we going to have enough in the resources?
Yeah, got to get a lot better, hopefully quickly. We know now, we talked about it earlier in the show, that it seems likely that we'll be able to go over to some of the workouts later in the week.
Yeah.
And then, it's not long after that we get to start a practice, and we can just see how far along, how far along this program is with these changes that they've made. I just think it's going to be such a fascinating spring. I don't know what to make of it. I've spent some time thinking that they could probably hit the ground running pretty quick because the system is so familiar to Mike.
And it's rather simple.
And it is simple, right? And so I do like, they have to worry about, instilling that tempo.
Yeah, tempo and decisions. There's some things like reads that you have to make, and motions and pre-snap. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of false starts in spring camp.
Oh yeah,
because Gus motions all over the place.
I love that. I love that. I want as much motion as possible.
Yep. There is something that is pleasing about Gus's offense. It's not the offense I would have wanted if you said you can have anybody. I don't know that I choose Gus for second or third, but there is something very, pure about that offense.
Well, it's old school in a way.
You're isolating matchups. You're putting people in conflict. You're forcing them to think. And there is toughness to it.
I think the hard part for us, if we're just talking about the offense, it's going to be better than what the slop you saw last year, which was just pure garbage. We know that. But I feel like it's kind of a oddly feast or famine offense. I feel like there are going to be days where we're disjointed and teams are able to wrangle and win first down against us, and you can't run the tempo you want. He's not a good enough passer. Next thing you know, you're a little frustrated.
Yeah.
But then there are going to be days where it's clear that you outman your opponent and you're getting them worn down and you're playing fast and you keep getting chunk yards on first down. And because we've seen it happen to us and we've seen it done to other teams that tried to do it. Like we've shut that down before.
Yeah.
And when you see that, there's a helplessness to it because you can't pivot to something else. That you have to run what you run. Yeah. And you got to run it better than everybody else, and you got to run it well. It's a very simple approach.
I think what we're thinking, and it's almost like just by nature of getting this offense in house and getting these transfers in house, you're skipping a step of, hey, we have to be competent again. But I feel resolved that not only are they going to be competent, I'm not worried about that. I think they're going to beat the teams they should beat by and large. You can get upset in a given week, but I think this offense helps you go to a place where if you're just better than the other team, you're not going to bail them out. Like you're going to beat those teams. The question I have is, what's the ceiling on this offense? And I think you have that question too. When you face really good teams, does this offense limit you? Or is it, hey man, we're in an era where we're getting back to some of the simpler things in football in both the college and pro game. The running back is more valuable than the running back has been in some time in the NFL, and that I feel that same way in college too.
Make them feel you though. You got to be really physical to run this. I think you have to have that element. Everything is born out of that.
Yeah.
That's just true in general. If you're going to talk about the running game, it's got to always be that. You just to run the football is emasculating for a defense when they can't stop it.
Right.
And that doesn't change, by the way. That ain't going to get better in the second quarter if you can't do it in the first.
That was the exhausting thing
meaning
look,
the defense can't stop.
I get it was 12 years ago that we played in the national championship game, but that was the exhausting thing about that offense was that it had a blend of trickery
and power.
Yeah. Straight ahead. The basis of it is actually straight ahead. And from there, it's who's got it? Right. And the quarterback that you have this year specializes in that very thing that we sometimes feel is not as resounding. It doesn't have that feeling of a period at the end of a sentence. It's kind of like it feels like what's the punctuation mark you would think that is like kind of, it's like the
semicolon?
Yeah, the semicolon. There you go. It's a semicolon. You're like, I don't know. We're not quite done here. We're kind of done, but we're not quite done here.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, this offense, at least to me, gets you started on the conversation that we want to have. And how they install it in spring is going to be fascinating to see, and the bumps along the road. but I want to know what it sounds like out there. I don't even know that I need to see it. If you could just send me an audio recording of what it sounds like, I'm fascinated by that.
I want to see it.
I know, and of course, I do too. But
I really want to see it.
I think that the sound of it is going to be very fascinating to me.
Well, and we both suspect that there will be big changes if the new coaches want there to be. Yep. I mean, in terms of how practices run, yep, what they emphasize, what they don't, how much hitting there is, how much good on good you see. I'm really interested in that.
Well, remember a few years ago, and I think they did it with Trey as well, when it was just his show a couple seasons ago. You know, all the running backs were in green for a stretch of time. You can't do that with this group. You got to know. For both the offense and the defense, I think you have to bring guys to the ground more often. I know that teams don't do that. I'll be fascinated to see how they work it. But when you're trying to sort out what you have and you're going to run the ball as much as Florida State's going to run the ball,
yeah,
I think it would be very worth it to make sure that the running backs are fully live in practice. So you know that if Cam Davis has assimilated to the speed of college football, so you know what you have in Sam Singleton, so you know what you have in Roy Dell or Keziah, because you got to vet that thoroughly before Cromagh gets on campus.
Well, you can't. Again, I'm just going to repeat what they said. That's the whole thing. Just listen to what the coaches said on both sides of the ball. They talked about being physically tougher than their opponents. They talked about, you know, this is an attitude that they want to permeate throughout the roster because of the style of play that they envision. Well, you just can't say that and hope that it's going to happen. They've got to do things that make it happen, and that's tackling.
Yep.
That just is.
It just is.
It just is. It's just tackling. So I don't know how they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it any other way. I'll tell you that. By the way, if you are currently a Jeff Cameron Show advertiser, you may not know this, but you get a free ad board from my guys at Tried and True Consulting. That's right. That Tried and True team is there for you as an advertiser of the Jeff Cameron Show. You have an exclusive offer. In fact, if you contact them, you get a free ad board. They'll talk to you about that. 55-inch 4K television installation, 6 months of ads free at all their other locations around Tallahassee. That's starting to become more and more and more as people have added Tried and True as their kind of one-stop shop for payments and all that good stuff. If you have a TV, you get 1 year of ads for free. All other participating locations with the ad board program as well. So it's something now that you can open yourself up to. It's just for being an advertiser. They're saying thank you. So reach out, Tried and True Consulting. We talk about them on a regular basis, and it's a good thing because they've done good work. We're happy to have them on board. Jeff Cameron Show 93.3, Real Talk Radio, and Warchant TV.